Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. This is our first live show in about a month since just before Christmas, but we're back live for the foreseeable future every Friday night at 8 o'clock here Pacific time. Next to me is our co-host, Mr. Eric Llewellyn. Hey, Eric.
How you doing, bro?
Very well, very well. And over in the wings, Mr. John Cornett, ready to play us some music. Hey, John. We have a number of news stories that have come out since our last live show, and we have some video clips and some other surprises. So stay tuned as we bring on our infamous Dancing Cannabis Leaves. All right, our first hemp news story tonight is from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. It is Friday, January 19th, and there's a lot of drama going on in the nation's capital right now. And this first story is affected by the drama happening in Washington, D.C. as we go live here. Members of the U.S. House of Representatives has introduced new legislation to protect states that have legalized the adult use of cannabis from federal interference. On Friday last week, Representative Barbara Lee, Democrat from California, and Don Young, a Republican from Alaska, introduced legislation, H.R. 4779, that's H.R. 4779, barring federal funding for any efforts that seek to detain, prosecute, sentence, or initiate civil proceedings against any individual, business, or property that's involved in the cultivation, distribution, possession, dispensation, or the use of cannabis in accordance with the law or regulation of the state or unit of local government in which the individual is located. Separate legislation to restrict the government's ability to utilize civil asset forfeiture as a tool to target state-compliant marijuana businesses, the Stop Civil Asset Forfeiture Funding for Marijuana Suppression Act, was also reintroduced in the House last week. On Wednesdays, Representative Lee and over a dozen co-sponsors introduced companion legislation to Senate Bill 1689, the Marijuana Justice Act. The act removes cannabis from the Federal Controlled Substances Act and would provide relief to those currently incarcerated for violating federal marijuana laws. Also, late last week, 69 members of the House signed on to a letter to congressional leadership seeking to amend the forthcoming appropriations bill in a manner that would restrict the federal government from taking action against innocent entities that are compliant with their state's marijuana laws. An existing budgetary provision, the Rohrabacher-Blumenauer Amendment, only protects those involved in the statewide medical programs, not adult use laws. That provision set to expire tonight, Friday, January 19th, absent reauthorization by Congress. It doesn't look like it's going to be reauthorized by Congress, but we'll see what those crazy congressional critters do. Also out of Washington, D.C., 61% of Americans believe the adult use of marijuana should be legal, according to polling data compiled by the Pew Research Center. The percentage is the highest level of support ever reported by the firm, which has polled Americans' views regarding legalization of cannabis since 1969. Support is strongest among African Americans at 71%, Democrats at 69%, and independents at 65%. Support was weakest among those retrograde Republicans at 43% and white evangelical Protestants at 38%. However, among self-identified Republicans under 40 years of age, 62% favor legalization. Go, young people. Pew's results are similar to those of other recent national polls. For instance, on October, Gallup poll found that 64% of the public support making adult cannabis use legal. Piniac poll released on Thursday reports that 58% of voters nationwide back adult use legalization, and 91% believe that medical marijuana should be legal. That poll also represents that 70% of voters oppose federal interference in state marijuana policies. Also in Washington, D.C., a bipartisan coalition of state attorney generals have issued a letter to congressional leadership urging them to advance legislation to permit state-licensed marijuana businesses greater access to banking and other financial services. The letter is undersigned by the attorney generals of Alaska, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Iowa, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Vermont, and Washington State, as well as from the District of Columbia and the U.S. Territory of Guam. The letter states, quote, prior Department of Justice guidance outlined how financial institutions could provide services to state-licensed marijuana businesses consistent with their obligations under federal law and create some space for banking industry to work with those businesses through challenges in many areas. The recent rescission of that guidance has made the need for congressional action to get the cash generated by this industry into the regulated banking sector even more urgent. It concludes, quote, our banking system must be flexible enough to address the needs of businesses in various states with state input while protecting the interests of the federal government. This includes a banking system for marijuana-related businesses that's both responsive and effective in meeting the demands of our economy, end quote. According to data published recently by the U.S. Department of Treasury, there are only an estimated 400 financial institutions nationwide actively engaged with legal cannabis businesses. That total could decline following the administration's decision to rescind various Obama-era memos specific to the federal enforcement of marijuana laws. Currently, legislation is pending in both the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, the SAFE Banking Act, to explicitly allow state-licensed marijuana. Down in California, select retailers began engaging in the adult use of marijuana sales on January 1st. California joins Alaska, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington in permitting cannabis sales to those over the age of 21. Two additional states, Maine and Massachusetts, permit adults to legally possess and grow cannabis but have not yet enacted regulations permitting the plant's commercial cultivation and sale. Under California's law, the retailers must possess a state license and also be compliant with local regulations. Numerous municipalities, including Berkeley, San Francisco, Santa Cruz, San Jose, and Los Angeles, have approved local regulations to permit marijuana retailers. Existing medical cannabis dispensaries are allowed to engage in the adult use sales if they possess dual licensing. Separate regulations governing the production, testing, packaging, and sale of medical cannabis also went into effect on January 1st in California. The regulations are the first broad set of rules governing medical cannabis production in California since the voters approved of the practice in 1996, the first state in the nation that allowed that. According to the state's Bureau of Cannabis Control, a newly empowered regulatory body there in California, regulators issued over 400 licenses to marijuana-related proprietors ahead of January 1st. Our next story is from Vermont. Members of the House and Senate of Vermont have given final approval to legislation removing criminal and civil penalties for the possession and cultivation of marijuana by those over the age of 21. House Bill 511 in Vermont legalizes the possession of 1 ounce of cannabis by adults and also permits home cultivation of up to 6 marijuana plants, 2 flowering, 4 not flowering. Those who cultivate marijuana for their own personal use may possess at home the total quantity of their harvest. That's better than we have here in Oregon. The measure now awaits action from Republican Governor Phil Scott, who vetoed similar legislation last year. However, he's recently said he's going to sign it in private because he didn't want to make it into a public event. So when House Bill in Vermont 511 becomes law, Vermont will be the first state to legislatively act to eliminate both criminal and civil penalties for the personal possession and growing of marijuana. According to Paul Armano at National Normal, quote, the majority of Vermonters, like Americans and the American public, deserve to live in a community where responsible adults who choose to consume cannabis are no longer criminalized. Governor Scott is wise to provide Vermonters with this path forward rather than cling to the failed policies of the past. We have a couple of stories from New Jersey. A new New Jersey governor has come into office that says he's going to completely legalize marijuana soon. But before Republican Governor Chris Christie left office 2 weeks ago, he signed a package of bills expanding the crimes eligible for expungement. Among other changes, the measures prevent employers from inquiring about a job candidate's criminal record and permit those convicted of certain marijuana sales offenses to seek an expungement of their criminal record. According to then Governor Chris Christie, he said in a press statement, quote, "We want to give those overcoming incarceration or the disease of addiction, young offenders, and all who've earned and deserve it, a second chance at life," end quote. In another state where the chance of life is a lot different, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Oklahoma voters will decide this June on State Question 788, a statewide ballot measure legalizing the use, cultivation, and distribution of medical cannabis to qualified patients, which we endorse and support the Yes on 788 campaign to build a broad coalition of support in favor of the measure. Oklahomans will vote on the issue on June 26th, my birthday, during the primary election. Republican Mary Fallin set the date last week via an executive proclamation. Oklahoma's State Question 788 permits physicians to recommend cannabis therapy to patients at their discretion. Patients possessing a state-issued marijuana license are permitted to engage in cannabis possession or cultivations, or they can purchase marijuana products from a licensed dispensary. The initiative's proponents gathered sufficient signatures to place the issue before voters in 2016. However, the vote was postponed because of litigation over the contested ballot title language. In a 7-1 ruling in April, the justices in the Oklahoma Supreme Court rejected the state attorney general's rewording of the initiative ballot title, which proponents had argued would purposely mislead the voting public, and ordered that the measure's initial language be restored. Under Oklahoma law, the cultivation or distribution of cannabis is classified as a felony punishable by up to life in prison. And it's not uncommon for Oklahomans to be sentenced to life in prison. So in New Jersey, you can expunge your criminal record for sales of cannabis so you can have a life, but if you've got it in Oklahoma, you will get life in prison. Make sense of that. In Honolulu, Hawaii, regulators at the Hawaii Department of Health agreed to expand the state's medical cannabis program so that patients diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, are also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, may be eligible to access medicinal cannabis. Citizens petitioned regulators to add both ALS and generalized anxiety disorder to the list of conditions eligible for medical cannabis therapy. The department officials concluded that there exists a lack of evidence to support the latter recommendations for anxiety. Preclinical models indicate that cannabinoids can alter ALS progression. However, controlled clinical trials evaluating the use of cannabis in patients with ALS have not yet been conducted. In Riverside, California, retail stores that sell primarily alcohol and tobacco are associated with increased prevalence of neighborhood crime, but medical cannabis dispensaries are not, according to data published in the Journal of Preventive Medicine. A team of researchers from the University of California at San Jose State University and the University of Kansas assessed the geographical relationship between retailers and crime in South Los Angeles. The authors concluded, quote, "Results indicate that mean property and violent crime rates within 100 feet buffers of tobacco shops and alcohol outlets, but not medical marijuana dispensaries, substantially exceed community-wide mean crime rates and rates around grocery stores and convenience stores. Thus, study findings provide the first empirical evidence that tobacco shops may constitute public health threats that are associated with crime and violence in U.S. low-income urban communities of color," end quote. A 2017 study of dispensary operations in Los Angeles previously reported that, quote, "Open dispensaries provide over $30,000 per year in social benefits in terms of larcenies prevented," end quote. The full text of this study, the geography of crime and violence surrounding tobacco shops, medical marijuana dispensaries, and off-sale alcohol outlets in a large urban low-income community of color, appears in this month's edition of Preventative Medicine. Our last story tonight is from Boulder, Colorado. Cannabis consumption is associated with the reduction in the presence of alcohol-induced inflammatory molecules or cytokines, according to clinical data published in the Journal of Alcoholism, Clinical and Experimental Research. The excessive production of inflammatory cytokines has been linked to the development of various diseases, including heart disease and cancer. Investigators at the University of Colorado at Boulder assessed the relationship between self-reported cannabis use and circulating levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines in 66 subjects who regularly drank alcohol. They reported that cannabis use was negatively associated with the presence of specific cytokines in the blood. The author said, quote, "Cannabinoid compounds may serve to mitigate inflammation associated with alcohol use," end quote, the authors concluded. The full text of this study, investigating the relationship between alcohol consumption, cannabis use, and circulating cytokines, a preliminary analysis, appears in Alcoholism, Clinical and Experimental Research. And that is the end of our Hemp News segment tonight. Mr. John Cornett is ready to play a song. Hey, John.
Yes, I am, Paul, and I think this song is probably a little timely. You know, I'm from one of those southern states where they would basically crucify you if you got busted with weed. My best friend, Randy Toller, got busted with half of a marijuana cigarette in 1972, and rather than face life in prison, he hung himself in jail. And since then, I've been an activist. He had half of a joint, Paul. That was 1972. It was
Our half-brother, I've got a half-brother on the camera, he was caught in, I think, 1975 with 2 ounces of marijuana in Dallas, Texas. And he was sentenced to 4 years in Texas State Prison, but did 2.
That was because in 1973 they changed the law.
Yeah.
In August of '73, I remember because I was in the Air Force in Wichita Falls, and we celebrated. I mean, I was smoking weed anyway, but we were all very happy when they did that because I thought of all the lives that would be saved, quite frankly. Anyway, this song is called "We Are Many." I wrote it just not too long ago, for the purposes of our movement, the hemp and cannabis movement. And it goes a little bit like this. We are many, we are strong, and so many be so wrong. We're giving in to too many lies. Doesn't anyone really care why? Can it be that we are right? Can we be peaceful through this fight? All we really want to see is humanity set free. We're just one big family, once united, we are free. Now's the time to make a stand, do the best we all can. That's right. Once awakened, we will see the potential of infinity. In abundance will be the norm when we are finally through this storm. Can it be that we are right? Can we be peaceful through this fight? All we really want to see is humanity set free. That's right. We're just one big family, once united, we are free. Now's the time to make a stand and do the best that each one can. We're just one big family, once united, We are free. Now's the time to make a stand. Do the best that each one can. Thank you.
So, how are you doing this week, Eric?
Good,
It's
how you
good to
doing?
have you back on the show. I know you had some auto problems and health issues, and
Feels great to be back.
it's good to
Get-
have
Getting
you
back
back.
to the norm.
Yeah, yeah. So, you're back on the road. What did you think of the changes in federal laws and
Yeah,
all
it's
the?
a cluster going on right there. It's like a whole backtrack of what we've been trying to fight for. It's pretty sickening actually to find out that's what we're be coming back to.
Yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. Looks like the federal government will have some sort of a shutdown here tonight. I guess the push comes to shove by the end of this show. This goes off at 9 p.m. Pacific time, and they had until midnight to do it. And when I last checked, it didn't look like they were going to do it. So we'll see what
See where
happens.
that goes.
If you have a question or comment for us tonight, we are taking your phone calls live. You can call us at 503-673-8579. That's 503-673-8579. We'll be taking live phone calls right up to the top of the hour. We also have a film clip that we're about ready to show here. And that is with our friend Jorge Cervantes. Jorge is allowed us to use his videos. He's from Portland here originally, and an old friend of mine for a little bit over 30 years. Is that video ready to roll? All right, we'll be back right in about 5 minutes. Stay tuned.
So, hey, this is
What, RAD
We're coming
conference?
back. Paul,
So that,
we're coming back.
oh, no audio there. Well, I hate it when that happens. There's all, it's the live show. We're all volunteers here. That's our mea culpa for the day. So maybe they'll get that ready to roll, and we'll know when that happens.
I'll jump in real quick, say something. So
Please.
the Hawaiian topic of the ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and the whole medical situation, I'd like to let you know I have muscular dystrophy, which is part of the ALS strain of
Yeah, a
web of
neurodegenerative disease.
Yeah, I've actually been medicating on cannabis for 29 years now. With no
And how
other-
old are you?
I just turned 38 at the beginning of this week.
Happy birthday.
So, thank you very much. So since 9 years old, I've been self-medicating with cannabis. So
And when you first used cannabis, do you remember when that was?
I was, it was a little.
When you're 9, it's hard to remember
touch
everything.
and go here at 9, but I started pretty heavy about the age of 13 when I realized that it was stopping my tremors, my muscle spasms and whatnot, and I realized it was doing something for me other than
Just getting you
me
high.
Exactly.
So that felt good too.
Yeah, that took. Well, see, and that's another thing with a disability. Sometimes you just need your mind to go somewhere else because you're stuck in the position you're at. So the high from your cannabis is also another type of medical release. It's a stress reliever. It lets you be free.
Anxiety reliever.
It
Even
is.
though the Hawaii legislature and the health department didn't want to add generalized anxiety disorder to the list of qualifying conditions there in Hawaii, they should have. At least they added ALS.
Right.
but-
It's all coming hand in hand together. I just want to let you know out there in Hawaii, if you need a study, I'll be your study. I know
right.
from an experience that cannabis can help you.
I've actually gone to Hawaii and seen about 8,000 patients altogether,
Nice.
starting back in, I think it was 2004. And I do want to give a shout out to Farmer Bill in Nebraska, who gave me this hemp tie. This tie is made from hemp fiber, and it has the character for hemp right there on the tie in Chinese. This is ma in Chinese, ma, which I could tell you more about that, but I won't right now. Our video with Jorge Cervantes, I'm told, is now ready to go. So we'll be back in 5 minutes or so.
So,
Hey, this is Jorge Cervantes, and I'm here with Humboldt Local and Todd, and we have got a garden tour coming up here. So what are we doing here, guys?
Looking for a plant.
oh,
Look
we're
at-
looking for a plant.
Well, we got a few plants around.
Yeah, we're looking
My God, look at this. Look at this. We've
Many that are just single strain.
Oh, okay, because everything's a mix.
we're looking for this Hindu Kush plant. We realized we had it the other day.
There it is.
Okay, it's okay. We found it.
Where we planted it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This was a plant we got at a seed swap event that they did down at Area 101. That's where Tim Blake's collective is, Healing Harvest Farms, just north of Laytonville. They did an event this spring, and a lot of local farmers there from Mendocino and Humboldt. And there was some old timers in there with a bunch of seeds, and we scored a bunch of vegetable and flower seeds from them. A lot of
Like
stuff
old
around-
timers, what do you mean, like 50 years old?
Yeah, no, I meant like
Older.
that, but they were also dressed in really old-timey clothes. So
Okay.
maybe that's why I'm thinking. They were just like simple back to the land people, but they had amazing vegetable and flower seeds. I think this marigold that's actually right here came from their seeds. But we got a bunch of veggie seeds, and they had a bunch of good ganja seeds, and everything was
Really?
basically very cheap, and they just seemed like really cool people. And I used to grow a lot of Hindu Kush blueberry, so I was excited that they had a Hindu Kush strain.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, this
And,
is,
yeah, you look at this thing, it's really indica. I mean, it's it's staying a lot smaller. You look at the plants that are next to it, there's plants that are 4 or 5 feet taller next to it.
yeah, that's a fact. I mean, if we get back and look at it, kind of get a little profile here, you can
know,
see.
Here, this is a cotton candy train.
This is a cotton candy train wreck here?
No, this is just cotton candy.
Okay, cotton candy.
Yeah, but it's just a lot bigger.
Yeah, it's way bigger,
starting to
isn't it?
flower.
And it's just starting to flower. I notice you've got this netting over them. You're going to have to put another net on top of
Probably.
this. A big, because gosh, if these get wet, those buds are going to be huge.
Yeah, I can just do a
You know,
like this
we're
with the bamboo, extend it another layer. I don't know if you'll get that with the sun.
yeah. Now it's it's still there. Wow.
But yeah, these are
Oh.
doing their final stretch right now. Over the next couple of weeks, as these buds set up, and
Yeah, I've noticed that the tops have shot up too.
yeah,
Shot up about at least a foot. So yeah, all these plants are pretty good sized here.
and the support is so crucial. You know,
Hmm.
we get rains here in the fall. It's inevitable. That's a part of outdoor full-term growing. Unless you have a strain that finishes about now. You know, it's end of August. We haven't gotten a rain yet, but September you usually get one random rain or two. We just don't know. We're getting changing weather patterns all around the world. Something we have to prepare and adapt to.
Well, yeah. The deal is, how long until the majority of these plants are going to be ready? Some of these are going to be a while, like this one here.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll start harvesting beginning of October, most likely, our earliest strains.
Uh-huh.
These Mr. Nice strain crosses that we have across the
All of these
Wow,
across
what
the
is
way
it?
over here?
Those two right ahead of you there. They're the
Okay.
most snugged up with, so check those out.
Yeah, they look pretty healthy.
Yeah, this is a cross I made back in 2011, I think. We were growing a lot of this Mr. Nice clone at the time, which this plant looks really similar to. The bud structure, the purple stalks, purple stems. And the Mr. Nice was a great clone because it finished so early.
Yeah,
It
it
would
was.
practically go into flower right away.
No, that's true.
So
That's true.
we would be able to harvest that end of September, middle of September sometimes, and that was always really nice.
Yeah, this is going to prove to really produce some serious weight here.
Well, this is a plant we call Mr. Mist. This is crossed with a strain called the original Mist that's been around.
Oh, mist, yeah,
Yeah.
forever.
Well, this mist came from my neighborhood, Palo Verde, that I grew up in, a neighborhood here in the southeastern part of Humboldt County, which is just across the county line from where our farm is right now.
Been hearing funny things.
Okay, welcome back. There's our friend Jorge Cervantes looking at how to grow big plants. You can find out more about Jorge out at marijuanagrowing.com. That's marijuanagrowing.com. And so I know we were talking just a moment ago about the concern with patients, medical patients who have a concealed to carry license or having guns. And there's a belief out there that some people hold that the legislature passed a bill that doesn't allow them to have a concealed weapons license.
Correct. That's what I've been
But I don't think that's true. I think that about 5 years ago, the Supreme Court of Oregon struck down the rules and laws regarding patients and allowing patients to have equal access to weapons and concealed carry licenses. So there were several counties, and I know Jackson County and Washington County, Washington under the sheriff with the infamous name Pat, the same name of the guy who shot Billy the Kid, Pat Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
So the sheriff in Washington County's name is Pat Garrett. And back during the Measure 80 campaign, I got to debate him. And he had, the crew cut with the hair cut off of 2 inches above his ears, and he had knee-high patent leather shiny boots. And he made a lot of illogical arguments about marijuana. And in the end, though, he actually won there in Washington County. I mean, we lost Measure 80, but then Measure 91 2 years later did pass. But Pat Garrett in Washington County and the sheriff down in Jackson County both appealed this ruling from first the Oregon court and then the Oregon Court of Appeals. And then the Oregon Supreme Court ruled that patients can have a concealed carry license. And then those 2 sheriffs still appealed the law to the United States Supreme Court. But the United States Supreme Court denied review. So the Supreme Court of Oregon's ruling stands. And I don't see how the legislature can overturn that.
So you have the right to bear your arm.
That's right. You can
There you
have weapons if you so desire, and you
Protect
have
your
a
crops.
medical marijuana license or card. Or even if you don't, you can still have those, right? Or if you're growing your own 4 legal marijuana plants here in the state of Oregon. So if you're out there watching anywhere in the U.S. of A. or the whole wide world, you can call us at that number there on your screen. It's 503-673-8579. That's 503-673-8579. Hopefully our phones will work. Sometimes they don't.
Right.
It's been a while since we've had a live show. So
Going on a couple weeks now here.
yeah. Since I think it was December 21st.
Yeah.
So it's about 4 weeks. We went 4 weeks without. And we do have a studio audience. If you'd like to come down and see us in the studio, we have an off-camera microphone where you can go up to the mic and ask questions. And we have Judy, who has gone up to the mic and is asking questions. So Judy, what have you got to say?
I know, I'm always so full of questions.
That's
you know,
good.
The thing with the sheriffs, we live in Washington County, and so often people run unopposed for positions like sheriff and DA. So and we end up getting what we get.
Right.
The ACLU, ACLU of Oregon has a campaign that they have kicked off, and for the life of me, even though I belong to the ACLU and I know the campaign well, I can't think of the name of it, but it's get to know your DA.
Mm-hmm.
And they are trying to help us get to know our DAs. They sent out a real nice, questionnaire. Just, what do you think about things? Kind of stuff. It's not designed to be a negative. It's just get to know your DA. Who are you? They hold tremendous power.
They do.
And they are elected, and so they are, to the public. And not one of these DAs responded to the initial questionnaires that were asked of them. Not one county, not one of them. But it goes to that, if there's only one person running, then we end up with what we end up with. I always, I'm thinking about all these things, and on one side, we got Jeff Sessions and all this insanity of the criminality in D.C., and yet
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, at the state level, though, we've got all this incredible stuff going on. I don't know enough details. Maybe there's things that should be done or not done, whatever. But it seems to me I'm pretty darn happy with our governor right now.
Yeah,
I
she
mean,
certainly
I am
stood up.
pretty darn happy.
I
mean,
know
she
I've
is
told
stepping
you,
up
and
to
you
the
may
plate
recall
big
that I
time.
actually worked in our governor's office as an aide back in the 1997 legislative session. I worked in Kate Brown's office during her first year as a state senator, and she told me I was ahead of my time then. I just started this show in '96, so I was doing this show back then too.
You were ahead of your time. And the governors are doing a remarkable job of coming together on quite a range of issues. You know, but the thing that always just keeps coming back to my mind, I think of Dr. Levesque, I think of Dr. Robert Malamud, and the issue of what's medical, you know. I mean, we're always fighting for the medical patients because we need it the worst. But in reality, they will tell us that everybody needs us, that we are deficient in what this plant provides and nothing else can. And so all use is medical use. Everyone needs it in their diet, in their life, not just to feel happy and more relaxed and more able to take the depth of what's going on, you know, more in a better
aches
way.
and pains
right,
of
yeah,
outrageous fortune.
yeah, but just for
Shakespeare
out
said.
and out health. Anyway, thank you.
Hey, you know, I'm glad you mentioned the Sessions thing, and you know, Jeff Sessions about 2 weeks ago said he was ending the policy of what was known as the Cole Memorandum, that the federal government would not direct U.S. attorneys not to interfere in state marijuana legalization or medical marijuana legalization. And in fact, just that day, the Attorney General the U.S. Attorney in the state of Colorado said he wasn't planning to change the policies of the U.S. Attorney's Office there in Colorado at all. Here in Oregon, our U.S. Attorney had an editorial published just in the last week asking for input on what they should do. And there's a lot of debate about that, so we'll have to see what happens. But what I'd like to say is that, you know, basically, if you don't live in San Diego, where the U.S. attorneys are crony capitalists or fascists, choose your term, or if you live in Florida, then maybe you might have something to worry about. But you really don't have anything to worry about as long as you're complying with state law. The federal government doesn't have the resources to come in and prosecute people who are in compliance with state law. And so it's not going to happen. And the best thing that could happen out of this whole thing where Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions removed this protection from federal prosecution is that it will incentivize the United States Congress to change the law. It's really in their hands, and we can see how dysfunctional they are right now. We're letting the whole federal government close down as we talk here, but they have the power, and I am hopeful that they're, you know, we talked about several bills that are before the legislature at the top of the hour in our news segment. We're hopeful that some of those might go forward this year, but I am even more hopeful that with a massive realignment of the Congress and the United States Senate next November in the 2018 elections, that we'll see a whole different composition of the Congress at this time next year, and that new Congress will be likely to change our federal marijuana laws. And that's what we basically have to advocate. You know, here in Oregon, all of our Congress critters and our United States senators back in Washington, D.C., all favor marijuana law reform. But if you're in another state, then you need to call your congressman and your United States senators and tell them to support the marijuana legalization bill that's put forward by conservative Republican congressman from Orange County, California, Dana Rohrabacher, and Portland's own Earl Blumenauer, and many other congressmen in the newly formed Congressional Cannabis Caucus. So if you're watching out there anywhere else, I urge you to call your representatives in the federal Congress and urge them to support the change in the federal marijuana law. Those phone calls do make a difference, don't you think?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Clay.
Clay is Clay Pierce.
Yes.
You want to talk about Clay for a minute?
Well, let's talk about Clay.
Okay.
Let's talk about Clay being stuck in El Salvador.
Clay Pierce is a friend of ours who volunteered on this TV show for about 15 years on the cameras and in the studios. And our last live show, we talked about, I'd gone down and visited him. He was traveling from here in, there's a webpage, freeclay.org. That's freeclay.org. Clay was mistaken in carrying an ounce of marijuana, or 36 grams, with him from Oregon to Colombia. Now, he had a medical marijuana permit, so the police here in Portland weren't going to bother him if he even had 1.5 pounds. And when he landed in Colombia, he would have been legal. But his plane had a stop in San Salvador, El Salvador, one of the countries our president has recently railed a racist rant against as being some kind of a S-hole country, according to delusional Donnie Trump. He insulted the whole people of that nation in Haiti and all the people on the continent of Africa. But that certainly isn't going to help Clay Pierce down there in prison in El Salvador for possession of 36 grams. So we urge you to contact our congressman and have them intervene to help Clay. Now, the U.S. Embassy has been very, very helpful. And in fact, I just talked to Clay for the first time since I visited him last month. I talked to him on the telephone this morning.
Oh, nice.
And he is not doing well. He's not doing well. He's under a lot of stress, and he's not receiving medical care, and he hasn't had access to commissary money, and there's been a lot of different problems. You can find out more by going to freeclay.org or to the Facebook page Free Clay Pierce. That's P-I-E-R-C-E, Free Clay Pierce. But I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes. We're praying for him.
It's pretty sad listening to him in jail, but we're hopeful that there are several things going on with his case right now, and we'll have more to report next week. I want to briefly tell people who don't know why this banner here is all white behind us. It's a very bizarre story where an Israeli-Canadian oil company called Adira Energy came in and took over clinics that I started and ran for 15 years. Based on lies and fraud, this business, Empower Healthcare, stole everything in my life, fired my family and friends, and has stolen this business through spending about over $1 million on attorneys, where I've spent about $150,000 on attorneys. These guys have spent over $1 million on attorneys, and that tells the tale. But it's not over yet, because we're going to take this to a jury and try to get justice. And so I urge you, do not go to Empower Clinics, the former THCF medical clinics. Do not go there. And if you know someone who needs a doctor to help them with medical marijuana, whether it be here in Oregon, Washington, or anywhere else in the nation, we have a physician referral service, and you can call us at this number, that one, right there on your screen, 503-235-4606. If you or a loved one are looking for a doctor who can help you get a medical marijuana permit, we have if you have any of those conditions, then we have doctors that we can refer you to. So just give us a call at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. And this has affected you, right?
Oh, horribly, horribly, yes.
They've also stolen our medical marijuana garden.
Our gardens.
And even though they never paid a penny for our property, they have taken away our garden property and got court order that they could do that based on their lies.
Yes.
So,
medicine for many, many families.
including your own.
Including my own, me and my wife.
Yeah.
That's our yearly medicine to help us maintain.
Thousands of patients have been robbed by this Israeli-Canadian oil company. Just look up Adira Energy, A-D-I-R-A, Energy. And if you want to find out more stories, look up Adira Energy and my name, Paul Stanford, and it'll pop up. We have another one of Jorge Cervantes' videos, part 2 of 4 parts of his video series on growing big marijuana plants. And so here it is.
Another pheno right in front front of Todd there. A little different pheno.
Still
Little
doing
lighter
nice, huh?
stalks.
Still
Little
doing,
different
still
bud
doing
structure.
well. Yeah, the buds are just a touch,
An 8
touch behind.
Yeah.
to be applied.
And
Bud
but
here that we seeded.
So what if you,
You
Jeff,
can see the
okay,
tag
this is
here.
a seed
And
tag
if
here.
it's
Yeah.
on your
Okay,
plant,
And I
you're
put the
smoking
green one
some
down
kind of
very
here.
track.
white.
Then
So
you're
you've got a
being tracked.
marker there, the screen tag, so you know this was seeded, so you know not to cut this when you're harvesting.
Mm-hmm.
Crossed with a berry white male. It's really nice berry white pollen. The same strain that our Emerald Cup entry was last year. Our dry sift was made from last year.
So this is all pollinated, eh?
Yeah, that was our first round of pollinating we just did. And
Okay,
we could
'cause
even
I did
do
it
it
3 days
earlier.
ago.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is real early too, isn't
Yeah,
it?
well, we're gonna do 2 more seedings before this one's done. Over the
Okay,
next
'cause-
couple, another week we'll do another one, and then we'll be able to tell by then whether our seeds have taken, and we'll know.
There's
Do we
another
really even
seeded
need
branch.
do we need a third
Yep.
pollinating? So this
Wow.
is our Planned Parenthood program.
This
We
one
like to
Well, this
call it.
Planned Parenthood works really well. You get localized crops, and they're well pollinated. So, how many seeds will one of those produce?
If your pollen is good, you could get hundreds, off of one branch.
Really?
Yeah.
Hundreds. Well, that's enough to tide you over for a few days.
Here's one that might go into next year.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're at the end of August right now, and this one looks like it's just started to really take off.
This is Training Day by Cotton Candy, which were the big ones we were looking at over there.
Training Day times cotton candy.
Farther
Now.
along.
And here's the root
Monster
structure down here. Yeah, really a big stalk. It's pretty
Right.
amazing. Big stuff.
She's going to be a late finisher.
Yeah, huh. Quite late. The end of August. Yeah, this could be the end of January before this is done.
But not much.
Yeah, this is a little bit further ahead. It's got little buds, but it looks like it's going to take them a long time to develop. Just from the, it's really dense in there too.
That's what happens with seeds sometimes.
Yeah, this tea,
This is
This-
a Chem Dog by Chocolate Thai.
Chem Dog
From
by
seed
Chocolate
again,
Thai.
both
You
of
can
these.
certainly see that tie in there.
Yeah.
Look at that bud.
This will be another
is an
late
It's
interesting
finisher.
very
strain.
tie-like.
This is a seed that I got in 2010, back when I was on the weed forums on the IC Mag, International Cannographic.
Oh yeah,
There
yeah.
was a really great NorCal cannabis community on there, and there was a breeder named Billy Goat Seeds. I think he was out of Lake County.
Uh-huh.
And there was a fantastic little cannabis farmers market in the back of this little cannabis dispensary on the north shore of Lake Blue Lake, or whatever that lake is, right there in Lake County.
Right, right.
And
Yeah, it's
I went there, and Billy Goat was there, and he had these seeds. And so I've got about 5 packets of those.
oh really?
This was the first year we popped any of them.
This
And
is
the one we
amazing. These
decided
things
to
are
go with
huge.
was this Chem D by Chocolate Thai. And man, yeah, it's turned out to be a total winner.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll see how these buds fill out, but
Yeah,
my
if they
God,
fill out,
those
they'll do nice.
they sure will, and those branches are nice and strong too. They can take some weight.
I'm going to have to get some more support on these.
Yeah, but that's a fact. That's a fact. But still, these things are huge. They're like 12 feet tall right now, and it's end of August.
Yeah, they're still stretching, and
Wow.
and it doesn't look like it'll be too late. That's a good thing. You don't want
No, we
something
had,
that's going to go too late.
We harvested some plants early December last year.
Yeah,
We
I've
didn't
gone
have any
deep
mold
into
on 'em.
November. I've gone deep
Wow.
into November over here.
Yeah, it must have been pretty darn chilly.
It was pretty darn chilly.
This is great. I love these.
All right. Again, thanks to Jorge Cervantes. And you can find out more by going to marijuanagrowing.com. That's marijuanagrowing.com. I think that either there's a problem with our video stream or there's a problem with our phones. I'm not sure which, because we haven't had any phone calls come through, which is very unusual. But if you want to try to call out there, that number's on your screen. It's 503-673-8579. That's 503-673-8579, though it doesn't appear to be working. I don't know exactly what it is. So what else have you got to say for yourself there, Eric?
Just
I got to put you on the spot occasionally.
I'll always fight for the medical person. If you got a medical disability, always look for that cannabis before you look for that pharmaceutical pill.
That's true.
You know,
You'll live longer.
Yeah, you will.
I just heard tonight one of my musical heroes, a real icon, Tom Petty. We all know he passed away. And it just came out tonight that he had multiple pharmaceutical drugs in his system, including oxycodone, fentanyl. He had 7 different pharmaceutical drugs in his system.
I haven't heard of anybody dying from cannabis.
That is what it was. If he'd only, and that's what I said, if he'd only been using cannabis, even if he wasn't on the pharmaceuticals, if he'd had a heart attack, he would have been more likely to be alive. But apparently, all of those synthetic opiates, which are more powerful than heroin, caused his heart to stop before anybody really noticed it.
They will take a toll on your body, that's for sure.
Well, everyone I know who's taken them, you can see it ages them. And people who use cannabis, it doesn't age them. They get to be youthful like us.
Well, I mean, like the wreck I was in the beginning of the year. You know,
yeah, you wouldn't have lived through that probably if you hadn't been.
My cannabis saved my life. You know, I cut back.
Tell our audience about that wreck.
I was me and my wife, did the right thing. Went out for a birthday gathering and went and had some drinks and did the right thing. Got a cab
Had some
ride.
cannabis too.
Had some cannabis too, and had some
at
drink.
that local club that won't remain nameless, Northwest Cannabis Club. I know we've got others out there, but hopefully they'll allow more of them in the near future.
Right.
But you were leaving there in a taxi.
Driving back from the club and ended up getting rear-ended by somebody. They aren't sure what happened or how it happened. I can't talk too much about that right now. But I ended up in the hospital. Ended up breaking my back. T9, T10.
And you were in critical
condition.
for
I was in the
several days.
ICU for I think it was like 4 or 5 days.
And your wife was severely injured as well.
I was on those the pharmaceuticals, so it screwed my brain. So I can't remember a whole bunch of it, but they had me pretty doped up on all those nasty pills.
And you had a lot of blood in your lungs, right?
I lost about altogether about 1,600 cc's of blood.
And how much is usually fatal?
They say critical is 500 cc's.
So they must have been just taking lots of blood out of your lungs,
right,
pumping it in one vein and out of your lungs at the
pretty
same
much,
time.
Yeah. So it was pretty.
Finally,
horrific.
they stopped that bleeding.
Yeah,
and you're here.
Got me back. Yeah, my wife's on the mend. So.
And you're still dealing with a lot of chronic pain issues from that, right?
Every day. It's been being raised with a disability, for anybody that has a disability knows it's a tough situation to go through. But when you have another life-changing experience thrown on top of that, it's kind of like starting all over again.
So I know you can't talk about it, but I can. You were driving down the highway in this taxi, and you're in the back of a taxi van for your wheelchair, and they're going at 55 or so, and you were hit from behind by a car doing about 100 miles an hour.
That's what they're approximating right now. There's no.
And maybe that guy was asleep, or it's hard to say.
Correct. Yeah. There's it's still up in the air, like I said. But there was a lot of damage done.
Yeah.
It's somebody that wasn't paying attention behind the wheel.
So you were in ICU for 4 days. How long were you in OHSU, the hospital?
I was in the hospital for about a week and a half altogether.
And then you had to go into a rehab for several months,
my wife was also my caregiver, and since she was injured in the wreck, she couldn't do any of the basic caregiving needs that I had. So with me being hurt, all that caregiving was like triplified into even more, every 10 minutes needed one thing or another. Right. So, rehab for about a month and a half. Finally able to come home. Still, wasn't able to get back normal, and right now I'm still
dealing with pain from that.
Pain from that. I'm not able to go back to my normal activities of working and doing everything I have because of my pain levels. It's just been a whole ride. So, but I'm alive.
Thank goodness for that. But the cannabis was a big life-saving factor in that for you. And that's what the studies have shown, that if you have cannabis in your system and you are in a trauma like you were, or you have a medical incident like a stroke or a heart attack, you're much more likely to survive if you're on cannabis than if you aren't.
Correct.
So it's amazing that these kind of studies don't get a lot of play out there. Another thing about cannabis is that it is a fuel, a fiber, and a food. And many of us know we can go into store and get hemp breads now made here in Portland, hemp milk and hemp seeds. Here is hemp seed oil. This is our cannabis flame of freedom. This is hemp seed oil burning on a hemp wick from hemp fiber. So we have hemp seed oil, hemp twine, flame. Cannabis was illuminant. It was before people had whale oil. They were using hemp seed oil all across Asia, Europe, and Africa for oil to light their lamps. And then right here next to it is hempcrete that is made from hemp fiber and quicklime or powdered limestone. And it's cheaper and stronger in many ways than concrete. So we like to educate people about the benefits of hemp fuel, fiber, and food, in addition to medicine and fun. So that's what the show's all about. We try to have fun too. And right after the show, we're going to go and consume cannabis.
That's fun.
That is fun. It's as high as I get every week, actually. I take my volcano, but many people smoke, and some of you, like you, have your dabbing.
Yes.
Yabba dabba doers.
We'll talk about that on another episode.
Okay.
Dabbing is awesome.
So we are about out of time. We will be back live again next week. You can tune in then for more information. If you want to find out more about getting a medical marijuana permit or about our work to legalize marijuana all around the world and fight for global cannabis freedom, give us a call at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. Mr. John Cornett is ready to play some more music as we go out in a loving chant of Kumbaya. Thank you for watching. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp like that.
Train wreck. Northern Lights. We like Shrek too. Sour diesel. Life is good. Life is good. Oh yeah. Life is good for you and me. So good. So good. So good. So good. We like God, but purple haze. We like cheese too. Cinderella. Life is good, oh yeah. Life is good.